Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into Chapter 13 of a short textbook of psychiatry. We're going to build a clear, foundational understanding of a really complex developmental condition by looking at how it's defined, what causes it, and what the modern approaches are for support and prevention. Okay, so what are we actually talking about here? Well, according to the textbook, a diagnosis requires three key things to be true. First, an IQ score below 70. Second, real significant challenges with everyday adaptive skills, things like communication or self-care. And third, all of this has to show up before the age of 18. And remember, all three of these pillars have to be there. Now, a quick but really important note on language. The textbook uses the clinical term mental retardation, so to stay true to the source, that's the term we'll be using. But it is absolutely essential to know that this term is now considered outdated, and it carries some really harmful connotations. Today, you're much more likely to hear more respectful and accurate terms like intellectual disability. So, how is this condition actually categorized? Well, the main clinical method breaks it down by IQ score. And this isn't just about putting a label on something. It's a framework to help understand the level of support a person might need to really thrive. This classification system has 4 distinct levels, as you can see, from mild to profound, all based on these IQ ranges. But, and this is a critical point the textbook makes, these scores always have a margin of error of about 5 points. That's exactly why assessing someone's real-world adaptive skills is always just as important as the number itself. When you look at the numbers, the distribution is pretty striking, isn't it? The vast majority of individuals with the condition, we're talking about 85%, fall into that mild classification. This means, of course, that the more severe levels are significantly less common. This slide really highlights the difference in potential outcomes, and it uses some older educational terms you'd find in the source. The mild level was once labeled educable, because individuals can often learn academic skills and go on to achieve independence. The moderate level was called trainable, with the focus being more on acquiring semi-skilled work abilities, usually in supervised settings. Now, at the severe and profound levels, which together account for less than 5% of all cases, the challenges are much more significant. Development is often markedly delayed, and the need for support, including things like structured environments and nursing care, is typically lifelong. This all brings us to a really fundamental question. What causes this condition? Well, the textbook makes it very clear that there's no single, simple answer. Instead, the causes are this complex mix of both biological and psychosocial factors. So the textbook lays out these major categories, everything from genetics and issues during birth, all the way to social factors. But honestly, the most striking takeaway here, it's that last line. In more than a third of all cases, a specific cause is never found. It remains unknown. To make this a bit more concrete, let's look at a specific genetic cause, phenylketonuria, or PKU. The textbook calls it an autosomal recessive disorder, which is just a scientific way of saying that a child has to inherit the same faulty gene from both of their parents. And this particular gene is responsible for a really critical metabolic process. This diagram illustrates the problem perfectly. See, because a key enzyme is missing, this amino acid, phenylalanine, can't be processed correctly. So instead, it builds up and up to toxic levels in the blood, which can then lead to severe brain damage. So here's the crucial point, the amazing part of this story. The severe intellectual disability caused by PKU is preventable. With an early diagnosis, which often happens through newborn screening, and a strict low phenylalanine diet, a child can develop normally. It's just a powerful example of what medical intervention can achieve. Of course, PKU is just one example. The textbook also points to a whole host of other causes, things like Down syndrome, which is the most common chromosomal cause, and also preventable conditions like congenital iodine deficiency syndrome, historically called cretinism, plus all sorts of issues that can happen during pregnancy or birth. Okay, so with such a wide range of possible causes, the approach to diagnosis and management has to be really comprehensive. The textbook emphasizes a proactive strategy that starts with a thorough assessment and then focuses heavily on prevention. A diagnosis is so much more than just an IQ test. It's a really meticulous process. It includes a full medical history, physical exams, and standardized tests for both intelligence and adaptive behaviors. These adaptive scales, like the Vineland Social Maturity Scale, are designed to measure practical, everyday skills. The best way to understand management isn't just as a treatment, but as this three-level strategy of prevention and support that aims to address the issue at every possible stage. The textbook outlines this really powerful, proactive model with three levels. First up, you have primary prevention, which aims to stop the condition before it can even occur. Then there's secondary prevention, which is all about early detection and treatment to minimize the impact. And finally, tertiary prevention, which involves rehabilitation and support to help individuals thrive after a diagnosis has been made. So what does this look like in practice? Well, primary measures are things like genetic counseling for at-risk families and universal immunization against diseases like rubella. And secondary measures are things like those newborn screening tests that can detect treatable conditions like PKU right after a baby is born. And once a diagnosis is made, the focus shifts to tertiary prevention. This isn't just about clinical care. It's this incredibly holistic approach. It includes everything from special education and vocational training to, and this is so important, providing robust counseling and support for parents and families, all of it backed by legislation that prevents discrimination. Ultimately, what this chapter shows us is this powerful shift, a move away from simply labeling a condition to proactively preventing it and compassionately managing it. The success stories, like preventing brain damage from PKU, show us what's possible. And that leaves us with a challenging question. If we can achieve this much through medicine, what more could be achieved through better social support, better education, and true community inclusion?